If you're looking for great board games to play with your partner, or you want a video sponsored by Surfshark, then you're in the right place. I've got 40 games to recommend to you, and I've split them into categories to help you find your next favorite game. I've been playing board games with my wife for over a decade, and making videos about them for 9 years. This is a compilation of every game I've ever recommended for couples. If you want to buy any of them, there are links in the description. The video is divided into 4 categories based on how competitive the games are. If you're a pair of softies who don't want to compete against each other, then pick the first category, full of cooperative games. If you prefer a game where you can do your own thing and can't mess with each other's plans, then check out the personal puzzle section. But if you like a bit of friendly competition, where you have to keep an eye on your partner, then you'll want the category called friendly competition. And finally, for those couples who are more competitive and enjoy getting in each other's way, have a look at the head-to-head category. But personally, I like a bit of everything depending on what mood we're in. And for each game, I've listed how long a game will last and a complexity rating from 1 to 3 rulebooks. So if you want something super easy to get into, go for the 1 rulebook options. Up first are the cooperative games, ones where you play on the same team as your partner, trying to win against the game. These are great for when you're not feeling in a competitive mood, but want some action. They'll have you solving a crime or surviving a jungle together, and are great at getting you talking and cooperating. The cheapest form of couples therapy you can get. In Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, you step into a Sherlock Holmes novel by solving a crime together. And not in that usual board game way of doing something. Ooh, I planted a tree. No, you didn't. In this game, you're actually given a mystery to solve, and by the end, you must work out who the culprit is and why. It's like watching an episode of a detective show together. It all starts with a dead body. Courtney Allen was found shot to death in an alley behind his office on the evening of March the 9th at approximately 7 p.m. by the constable on patrol. But instead of following the TV detective around as they interview suspects and have some mild flirtation with their partner that won't resolve for another 22 episodes, you get to decide which leads to follow. You could visit the victim's workplace or interview their brother, or if you're listening closely, you could find a lead that others wouldn't.
They said there was a cigarette at the crime scene, so let's visit all the tobacco shops and see if they know something.
You look up the place you want to go in the book and read the encounter, and it's written in the style of the novels. It is evident that Walter Cahoe has come up through the ranks and would be more comfortable in overalls than his present ill-fitting tweeds. And while you read it out, your partner takes notes and tries to spot the subtle clues. The murderer isn't going to admit they did it, but maybe their limp or their accent will connect them to evidence you already have.
So this guy isn't used to wearing a suit, which means he recently got promoted.
Which means
he killed his boss's enemy.
Does it?
This is why you never get promoted.
Making those connections feels amazing, like you're actually a detective. And I love going back over my notes and discussing our theories with each other. The cases are written like a proper whodunit, so you start off thinking that one person is the killer, and then as the mystery unravels, you keep changing your mind. This is the one game that actually breaks my rule of being able to play it in under an hour. And we don't usually finish a case in one sitting, but it's super easy to pause it and come back to another night. Each box has 10 cases in, and once you've played a case, you've solved it, so you can't play it again. It's the equivalent of a single malt 18-year-old whiskey for board gamers. It won't last forever, so we bring it out as a treat on special occasions. There are 4 boxes you can get. The red one is my least favorite because it has these Jack the Ripper cases that are a lot darker and more unpleasant. But you could start with any of the other 3. You don't have to play them in order. And they're all great. The toughest cooperative game I've ever played with my wife is deciding what film to watch. So it's between 4 Weddings and a Funeral and Love Actually. Those are both your suggestions. I don't want to watch another Hugh Grant film. Oh, babe, are you depressed? Because I know some films that could cheer you up. There's this one about a guy that owns a bookshop in Notting Hill. It's got Julia Roberts in it. But it's been so much more fun since we got the expansion, Surfshark VPN, the sponsor of today's video. Surfshark lets us access the internet as if we live in America, so we can get all the US-only content, which has opened up a whole load of new options to choose from. I've whittled it down to You've Got Mail, Sleepless in Seattle, or Splash? Tom Hanks is just Hugh Grant for Americans. What? Hugh Grant is Hugh Grant for Americans. Tom Hanks is a holiday that Hugh Grant fans can go on when their partner's being difficult. If you're a Hugh Grant fan going on holiday, Surfshark will keep you safe online by encrypting your data when you're using public Wi-Fi. Sign up to Surfshark using the link below, and you'll get 4 months free if you use the code Actualol. Are you watching 4 Weddings right now? Oh, is it streaming? I hadn't noticed. Forbidden Jungle is the 4th game in the Forbidden series of cooperative games, after Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert, and Forbidden Sky. Forbidden Desires, my fanfiction erotica, has been deemed not part of the canon by Matt Leacock, and I've since been Forbidden Contact. I find there's something magical about these games. They immerse you in their own vibrant world, but in a simpler, punchier way than other cooperative games. And there's a familiarity that runs through them. It's like doing an escape room for the 4th time. You're excited to see what new twists they've added to what you know and love. This time you're trying to escape an alien planet, and your enemies are these giant spiders. Which is great. No, I like spiders. Whenever they come into my flat, I offer them my cookbooks and complete works of Shakespeare. You're exploring the jungle by revealing face-down tiles, which I always love in games. It makes it feel like an adventure. And to win the game, you need to find a portal tile and then surround it by 4 crystal tiles. Because one of the neat twists of Forbidden Jungle is that you can move tiles around, which makes it feel so different from the rest of the series. You have to use these configurator machines, and it works like those sliding puzzles you had as a kid. You can only move a tile if there's space for it to go. But to make space, you can use a destruct switch to blow up a tile, killing everything on it. This is my favorite thing about the game. It's such a novelty to be able to destroy the world you're in, like playing a video game with a destructible environment for the first time. One game we used the compeller to move 10 spiders to the same tile, then blew them to smithereens. It felt like something out of a movie. There's a lot of fun mechanisms in this game, like the electrifier, which works like one of those blue fly zappers. It kills any spiders that move onto it. The spiders come in 3 forms. Eggs, which turn into hatchlings, which turn into adult spiders. They're the ones that can kill you. It gives a nice progression to the threat. If you don't deal with the eggs, you'll be in trouble later on. And because the eggs appear in nests, the more of the map you reveal, the more enemies you'll be dealing with. The adults also spin webs, which make it much harder to get around the board. And the adults move before biting anyone on their tile, so you're not safe being anywhere near them. Because there's 4 directions each spider could move in, the enemy is hard to predict, and I think that might frustrate certain gamers who want to feel more in control. But I really like the added fear that it brings. We've all been terrorized by an unpredictable spider who doesn't go where you want. Not that I'm scared of spiders. I just refuse to go to Australia because of the people. Carcassonne is one of the original pillars of modern board games, in which you build a map of medieval France and compete to control cities and farms. And now, after 22 years, they've made a cooperative version of it. In Mists over Carcassonne, your favourite French town is overcome by fog, which is the amount of jeopardy we can handle right now. We're not going to stop wanting to play this game because of an unprecedented global fog. The fog brings with it ghosts, and if the town becomes so overrun with ghosts that you run out of them, you lose the game. Meanwhile, to win the game, you've got to collaboratively build a great town and score loads of points for it before the ghosts get you. It's the classic cooperative game dilemma. Short-term firefighting to stop yourself from dying versus the long-term need to get your coursework done, because what's the point in even being alive if you don't finish your degree in media studies? And that conflict is present in every tile you take. Do you add it to your perfect city to score you the most points, or do you use it to trample the threat? If you ignore either one for too long, you'll lose the game. The fog works like its own type of region, and if you're able to close it off, like finishing a city, you can get rid of all the ghosts. But it's really hard to do. Another way to get rid of them is when you score a road or a city, instead of taking the points you'd get, you can remove 3 ghosts. But that goes against everything us gamers stand for. It's like asking a kid if they want another Christmas present or to sponsor a donkey instead. I want my points, Carcassonne. It still feels like Carcassonne. Deciding where to place your tile is still a challenge, But now you get to share it and help each other spot good openings. And because the threat of the fog is built into the tiles you're placing, there's no admin to slow you down between turns like most other co-op games. It's great. And it makes me feel stupid for thinking it wouldn't be. It's like they've put a hat on Beyonce. And the hat's nice, but it wasn't ever gonna look bad, was it? Chronicles of Crime gives you a faff-free experience by using a mobile app to be the brains of the game. Okay, so you still have to lay out some cards, but that's some of that polyunsaturated faff that's actually good for you. And it cuts out any rules faff by teaching you how to play while you play an introductory scenario. You play as detectives trying to solve a crime together, and you use the mobile app to interact with that world. When you visit the crime scene, for example, you get to explore the room on the app like you're looking around it yourself to try and find evidence.
Oh, there's a knife! And the sleepy woman is covered in ketchup. John, I think she might be making a sandwich.
And the evidence you find then becomes cards that you can ask people about. To interview a suspect, you scan their QR code and read what they have to say. If you've been to a restaurant in the last 2 years, I know you can do that. The genius of the app is that you can ask a suspect about anyone or anything, scanning the code of a book you found at the crime scene or a rumor someone told you about. Sometimes they won't know what you're talking about, but when you get a juicy answer, it feels great.
Ask him about the ketchup.
Wow, they tested the ketchup that was found at the lunch scene, and it actually belongs to the politician.
She stole his ketchup. No wonder he killed her.
And just like in a real case, asking the right questions will open up whole new places to visit and people to interview. And by the end, you've got to use everything you've learned to solve the case. The Mind is a game of practicing your telepathic skills. You're each given some numbered cards, and your collective goal is to play the numbers in the right order, but without talking. So you have to sense when to play them. You have number 37. The last card was 16. So why has no one else played anything yet? Are you next? Should you play it? You've lost your train of thought. You wait too long and someone played 54. That's how you lose a life. It creates an atmosphere I've never felt in another game. There's this zen focus, like you're all holding your breath until the round ends. No one's checking their phone or getting distracted because you know that one false move could cost you the game. It's a real bonding experience too. You're looking in each other's eyes, noticing their small movements. And as the rounds go on, learning their rhythm. If you keep playing with the same group, you will get better, like a band starting to gel. That silent tension is so intense that you'll erupt with laughter at someone's facial expression, and you'll feel like you won the World Cup when you conquer a tough round. I spent an entire evening at a convention surrounded by hundreds of games I could be playing, instead playing this £10 game over and over again with the same people. And it might just be a coincidence, but we're now all living on a commune together, sharing a bed. This game, it does things. When I was first getting into board games, Pandemic was what made me fall in love. You work together with your friends to save the world, flying around the globe trying to cure 4 deadly diseases. You're playing against the game as it spreads disease across the world, and it's a race against time to find a cure before it's too late. But you also have to treat infected cities and prevent outbreaks, because there's not much point finding a cure after the whole world has succumbed to the virus. You each play a vital role, such as medic or quarantine expert, making you better than the other players at certain things. The joy and the challenge is in looking at the map, discussing your options, and working out how best to work together. You can't be the hero on your own. You need each other to win. Cooperative games are great social experiences because they bring you together against a common foe. Like if someone said something rude to you on the street and you spend the rest of the night bonding over how much of a dickhead he was. Pandemic is the best dickhead you'll ever meet. You will lose, but you'll lose together, and you'll want to go again, having learnt from your mistakes to really show that dickhead what for. Pandemic is the perfect medley of excitement, strategy, and social interaction, with a fun challenge that's different every time. Fall of Rome takes the brilliant framework of Pandemic and turns it into something completely new. 5 barbarian tribes are marching on Rome, and you'll be working together to fight them off and stop them from sacking the city. It's remarkable how well the original system that once applied to spreading disease now simulates the relentless invasion of troops, done with such a simple twist that you wonder why no one thought of it before. Instead of always placing cubes where the cards tell you, like in normal Pandemic, you put them at the next furthest spot along that tribe's warpath. Each round they will march closer and closer. You have to recruit legions to fight them off and attack them by rolling dice. So getting rid of cubes is no longer a foregone conclusion, and I like that added suspense. To win the game, you need to collect cards to forge alliances with the tribes, or you can simply wipe them off the map. It's another ingenious little twist that makes perfect sense for the theme and presents you with new decisions you never had in original Pandemic. Just like in Pandemic Iberia, I love that they've committed to the realistic, slow movement of the era. You can't fly wherever you want, and walking is as frustratingly inefficient as getting stuck behind a group of tourists trying to use the London Underground. I really love how they managed to iterate on what was already a flawless system and still keep it approachable, streamlined, and just as fun. There's something special about a game that you can start playing on its cover. It asks us, who murdered the burger vendor? Here's the burger place in the top corner, and you can see our guy serving a customer. Then you have to find out where he goes next. Here, he's left the burger place, and he's walking down the street, smiling without a care in the world. But who's that following him with a mask on? Oh no, he's got a baseball bat. And there's the body. The poor guy has served his last burger. Micro Macro is a hidden picture book turned into a game that doesn't just ask us, where's Wally, but why's Wally carrying a pickaxe? Who's Wally killing in cold blood? And what's Wally gonna do with the body? Where it trumps Wally is that the characters don't just appear once, they move through the world and tell a story. So each case has you finding the people involved and following them, observing what they do. Take the case of Disco Chips. You find local DJ Las Vegas shot dead in a back alley. You can trace him back to where he bought his chips, find out where he lived, work out who killed him and why. And I say you because you can literally play this case online to get a taste of the game. Micro Macro gives you that simple joy of discovery. The huge map is so detailed, and each case has you explore new parts of this world that feels alive with character and riddled with crime. So when you go hunting for a criminal, you'll come across a baby drinking a coffee. And there's something really nice about bumping into characters from your previous cases, like seeing an old friend, an old murderous friend. I love exploring the world because the artwork is so cute, and when we play, we're always pointing out little Easter eggs to each other, finding our favorite characters. This is one of those games that I save to play with my wife because there's no one I'd rather explore this world with. Up next are the personal puzzles. These are games that will have you working on your own strategy, getting engrossed in your own puzzle. They're perfect for anyone who gets frustrated by other players messing with their plans too much. And they're the most chilled experience you'll get. You're competing, but it's a pleasant rivalry, like 2 secondhand bookshops on the same street, which is clearly the start of a great rom-com. Patchwork is a puzzle game that plays on a deep human need to make things neat and tidy. You're taking Tetris shapes and sewing them to your patchwork quilt. The goal is to fill up your personal board so you leave as few empty spaces as possible.
You are going to be so bad at this game. I've seen you pack a suitcase.
Ha! I've seen you load the dishwasher and organize the fridge and put away the shopping.
So you agree I do more than you?
Each turn you can only take from the next 3 shapes, so you're striving to make something beautiful, but working with misfits, like trying to write a song for the Spice Girls. Every new piece incapable of harmonizing with the others, and threatening to create gaps that you'll never fill.
If I put it here, it will ruin everything, and if I put it here, it will ruin everything. Oh, if I flip it over and rotate it, it will ruin everything.
So there's something intensely satisfying about finally slotting in a piece that perfectly fits your awkwardly shaped hole. It's like finding true love. To be clear, the hole is in your heart, so it hurts when you see the piece of your dreams and your opponent takes it. The game creates a seething rivalry. You can't tell them how much you need that piece until they take it. Like two single people at a wedding competing over the last available man who doesn't talk about crypto. He's wasted on you.
Huh. As if he'd want to go near your moldy old quilt.
But as much as you want to, you can't just focus on making it look neat. You've got to get this quilt filled up. Each tile takes time to sew, and you only have limited time to finish your quilt. All retirements end eventually. If you only take shapes that use up a lot of time, you'll end the game with a half-finished quilt. That's not going to keep your grandkids warm. And as punishment, you lose 2 points for every empty space. You soon learn that the trickier, uglier pieces are much better value because you get more coverage for your money. So now you're taking the shapes that will cause you problems, like recruiting the troubled kid to the team because he's just so dang good at throwing baseballs. Then doing your best Sandra Bullock impression to help him fit in neatly, because you're racing against your opponent to complete a perfect 7x7 square first to win 7 points. So you've got to be neat, cheap, and quick. And it's that challenge that makes Patchwork so addictive. In Cascadia, you each build your own personal area of the Pacific Northwest by adding habitat tiles to expand your lands and putting animals in those habitats to live there. It has all these magnificent wild creatures like elk and hawks and bears. On your turn, you always take one of the pairs, one tile and one animal. And the habitat tile can go wherever you want, but ideally you want to expand regions of matching terrain because you'll score points for your biggest habitat of each type at the end of the game. Whereas the animal token can only be placed on a habitat tile that has its icon. The main goal of Cascadia is to place animals in certain patterns to score points. In each game, you have a card for each animal telling you how it will score. So in this game, you'll get 10 points for clusters of 3 bears, but next game, you'll need the bears in pairs instead. It means that every time you decide where to put a habitat tile, you're actually planning ahead by putting it somewhere where it might help you create a long salmon run, for example. There's something satisfying about that. Every turn, you not only get to build for the future, but you can also finish off something you planned earlier. And it's a strategy that's easy to keep track of because those habitat tiles are the outline of the drawing you've already made, and you're now just following on tracing paper. But that doesn't mean it isn't tough. Every turn you've got to decide which pair to take, and you always have to compromise your plans somehow. Do you take the habitat tile that perfectly extends your huge forest? Sure, but it doesn't have an elk icon on it, so it ruins your perfect elk ring that you were planning. Or do you take the salmon token because it will get you so many points to finish that run? But that comes with an annoying fox habitat tile which you don't have a use for. It's a brilliant system because you always get one thing you want, and then you're lumbered with something annoying. The key to Cascadia is to not get your heart set on anything. It will come to your turn and there won't be any salmon again. That's your cue to pivot. Most habitats can take more than one type of animal, so you ditch your plans for a salmon run and stick bears down there instead. And I love that about this game. You never feel out of option. There's always something new to try. Trekking Through History is this year's best new gateway game, and such a great introduction that I'm actually angry at the newbies who get this as their first board game. It's got an interesting theme. You're time traveling through history as an obnoxious time tourist, turning up to sculpt with Michelangelo or write a play with William Shakespeare. And it's dead simple. Every turn you choose a card from the board representing a cool moment in history and add it to your trek. It's a family-friendly take on the past. You can ride with Genghis Khan, but you don't get to see him at the coalface. You're trying to create the perfect timeline by taking cards in chronological order, because you get huge points for a trek of 10 or more cards. As soon as you travel back in time, your trek is finished and you have to start again. But you also need to take certain cards to collect the resources to complete your personal itinerary. So every card you take is a compromise for one or the other. Plus, witnessing history takes time and each card moves you around the clock. This is one of the neat modern touches of the game because you don't take turns in order. The next player is the person furthest back on the clock. It's a mechanism you might know from Patchwork, and it gives you the chance to make clever moves, like taking 2 turns in a row to get the cards you really want. It's a personal puzzle, but a remarkably satisfying one. And it still manages to get you talking by having a theme that everyone can enjoy as you read more about the history on the backs of the cards. In Sagrada, you are using these dice to create a stained glass window. Every turn you take one and add it to your board. Your board that has these pleasant divots to house your dice. The challenge is in putting your dice in the right place. You're aiming to create certain patterns to get points. And to make that harder, some spots on your board can only take certain colors or numbers. And to make that harder, you can't put the same color or number next to each other. And finally, you've got to reckon with which dice came out of the bag this round. So you have to rein in your expectations a bit. You can't paint the Sistine Chapel if all you've got is crayons. And I guess the same applies in the world of glazury. Sometimes they run out of purple glass, probably. The game does give you a few weapons with which to fight the luck of the dice. You can spend these gems to use one of these tools to change a number or move something around on your board. Sagrada is a really satisfying puzzle that is super easy to learn, but has enough to keep you engrossed. Its trick is that every time you come back to it, it feels like it's solvable, but it isn't. It's like doing a Sudoku where you can't use the number 7. I did a Sudoku once, easy, completed it. I never need to do another one. Whereas with Sagrada, there's a reason to keep coming back. It couldn't be named after a more apt cathedral because you could spend 100 years on it and still not feel like you've completed it. I can completely understand anyone who might have overlooked Fairy Tale Inn because on the face of it, it looks like Disney Connect 4. And that is the least appealing 3-word combo in board games since D-Day Monopoly. It's a 2-player game played in this vertical plastic board in which you drop fairy tale characters into the top of a column and they fall to the bottom. It's as if to destroy Disney Connect 4, it had to become Disney Connect 4. Fairy Tale Inn starts in the same place, but with every new idea it sprints ahead, leaving Connect 4 on the starting line sucking its thumb. Okay, so the Olympics was on this week. Its first revolution is that when you drop a tile into the grid, it faces you. You sit on either side of the plastic contraption, and you can see where your characters are because they're in color, whereas your opponents are in silhouette. The designers must have taken the afternoon off after coming up with that one. The second revolution is that you're not trying to just connect 4 things in a line. You have many different goals, all in the search of gaining coins. Each character tile you place in your inn scores in its own way. Some will get you coins during the game, such as the princess who gets you a coin for every other princess in a diagonal line, whereas others only score at the end, like Red Riding Hood, who gets you a coin for every one of your characters you manage to place next to her. It gives you loads to consider. Do you place defensively to stop your opponent from scoring big, or focus on your own endeavors? And your options aren't only where to place, but what to place, because each turn you can choose which tile to take. The bottom 2 are free, whereas the others cost you coins. Remember, coins are points, but it can be worth the cost if you can make more from it, or stop your opponent taking it. Tiles join the track at random from the bag, so there's a healthy frustration in the tiles you want not coming up, and you have to think on your feet and find another way to prosper. Some characters are more interesting than others. I particularly like the big bad wolf, which makes each row a battle for having the most wolves. On the other end of the excitement spectrum is Jack, who is always followed by a beanstalk tile, which I just found really boring because he doesn't actually change the scoring. Thankfully, you only play with 5 characters, so you can mix them up each game to create a new dynamic. But the game only comes with 8 characters, which feels really cheap. It's like they found the bare minimum they could include before it would damage the gameplay. And if that makes you angry enough to want to scream into the void, the box can provide the void, because even a light 2-player game needs to fill up half a shelf these days. It's not like we're living in a golden age of board games which are all competing for space or anything. God, it's hard to recommend this game. Maybe you should overlook it. Or just play it in a board game cafe so you don't have to commit. The third revolution, let's get back to that, is making certain grid locations appealing. If you put your tile here, you get a free coin.
And it becomes a game of chicken with who is going to take the spot below that, thereby giving that space to the other player. Even better are these mean spaces in the heart of the board that cancel your character's power. Fairy Tale Inn feels like an abstract game, the way you desperately try not to grant your opponent an opening, but with a flourish of luck that keeps it from getting too serious, because you can't plan for everything.
You need to trust me on Quinto. You might hear its stupid name, look at its pathetic box and grid of numbers, and tell me that 2002 called and it doesn't want Sudoku back. But it is so much fun. Every time the dice are rolled, you're desperate for something to come up. It's like playing craps at a casino, but you can decide your odds. How big of a risk do you want to take? You're after points, and you get them by completing rows on your sheet. Every turn, the dice give you a number. Say 12. You have to decide where to put that 12. A number can only appear in a row once, and it must run in ascending order. To play it safe, you could put the 12 in at the end, but that means you'll only ever get 12 points for that row, which is pathetic. And it's that sort of thinking that makes you want to go big, so you put the 12 further down, leaving room for a bigger number later. But higher numbers are less likely to be rolled, and if you don't finish your row, you'll get even less than that pathetic 12 you scoffed at. When it's your turn to roll the dice, you choose which colors to roll, and if you only roll one dice, you'll get a lower number, which is good for filling in gaps, but it has to be in the row with the same color as that die. So you might end up rolling something that you can't fit in and going bust that round. If you don't roll what you were hoping for, you are allowed one chance to re-roll the dice, but then you have to stick with it. I love it when someone gambles on a better number than ends up going bust. Every game, someone gets a lesson in flying too close to the sun. Quinto is my favorite travel game for couples. It's a tiny box, you can roll the dice in the lid and play it anywhere. I take it on every holiday. Here's us playing it on the seafront in Croatia, here's us playing it in a bar in Copenhagen, and here's us playing it on a balcony in Greece. Quinto is the toothbrush of board games. Don't go on holiday without it.
On Tour is a puzzle game. You're trying to plan the perfect tour for your band across the United States. Every turn, the game gives you two numbers to write on your map, and they represent the gigs on your schedule. You're trying to create a route so that you can drive your tour bus from one gig to the next. At the end, the player with the longest continuous route will win the game. It's such an easy idea, in theory. You can even use your pen to map out an ideal route. But each turn, you'll flip 3 cards, and you have to write the numbers in those regions. So early on, you're all optimistic, and that soon shifts to desperation as you say goodbye to another section of the board. This is the sort of game that you'll pick up by the second turn. And it's nice because you're all playing at the same time, using the same numbers. So at the end, you can compare and see how much better or worse it could have gone. The genius touch of On Tour is that it tempts you into taking risks. Each card has a specific state written on it. And if you write your number in that state, it's worth an extra point. But to do it, you have to change your plans. It's the character in the music biopic that offers you drugs for the first time.
Why don't you come over here and play a little gig in Wyoming? I know you want to.
I can't. I promised my wife I'm going to Utah next.
Just one little gig in Wyoming never hurt nobody.
Oh, what the heck. Okay, but just this once. By the third act, that passion-fueled trip to Wyoming will have ruined your tour, and you'll only have yourself to blame. When it comes to regrets, like your tour bus driver, you've had a few, but you did it your way. Unfortunately, your way sucked. Still, the game takes less than 30 minutes, so now you know what you did wrong, you can go back and do it all again, and make some different mistakes.
Railroad Inc. is a roll and write game. You roll 4 dice, and everyone must draw those roads and railways on their map. You're trying to connect all your exits together to achieve Transport Network Nirvana, which looks a lot like Spaghetti Junction. The joy for me of a great roll and write is that communal feel. We were all given some cheese and eggs, and I made a passable omelette, whereas Archibald whipped up a cheese souffle, and Dave got salmonella poisoning. Unlike other games that complicate the format, in Railroad Inc., There's no waiting for other players. We're all puzzling it out at the same time and sharing in the pain that those dice deliver. You can pick it up in seconds. It's challenging and satisfying, and it looks lovely too.
It's called Second Chance. It's a puzzle game. You flip over 2 cards and you choose one of the Tetris shapes to draw on your grid. The winner will be the player who is left with the fewest gaps, so you're trying to pack it all in as tightly as possible, being efficient with the space. It's got the same tension as Tetris, not knowing what's coming up and whether you'll be able to fit it in, and the satisfaction of getting a piece that slots in exactly how you want. If 2 shapes come up that you don't have space for, the game gives you a second chance. You can flip 1 more card. If you can fit that one in, you're still in the game. If not, you're done. Let's not beat around the bush. My Farm Shop looks like a mobile game that you wouldn't play. One that pops up to advertise to you while you're playing a mobile game that you would play. I don't think it looks bad. It's not bad artwork. I've just evolved to distrust it. Those shiny images and smiley faces feel like they're hiding gameplay designed by evil psychologists to make it as addictive as possible. But it's actually designed by Rudiger Dorn, the man behind Las Vegas, one of the best games of all time. So I had to try it. In My Farm Shop, you own a farm, and every time the dice are rolled, it activates one of your fields. So if I roll a 10, I get an egg, and if I roll a 5, I get some honey. It's a system borrowed from Catan and later resurrected by Machi Koro and Space Base, but My Farm Shop is the best take on it yet. The produce goes into My Farm Shop, and now I need to sell it to get money to prove to my father's ghost that I'm capable of running a farm. They're not explicit about that detail in the rulebook, but you've only got to look at the woman's sad eyes to fill in the blanks. And selling your produce is not a foregone conclusion in this game. You also have to roll the right number to make a sale. Now, if you've never played Catan, rolling 2 dice is a troublesome affair. Those 2 dice absolutely love the number 7. Obsessed with it they are. And they're not half partial to a 6 or an 8, but they hate rolling the 2s, the 11s and 12s, to the point that you'd think they're incapable of doing it. Like a child who won't make the bed. You've seen it happen. You know it's possible. But don't hold your breath. The point is, if you can only sell produce when the dice rolls 11, you're not going to be selling very often. Thankfully, that little genius Rudiger Dorn has got you covered. Catan, Space Base, Machi Koro, they all use 2 dice, like a bunch of chumps. My Farm Shop gives you 50% more dice to roll. 3 dice. Cutting straight into the profit margin of the game. The publisher was like, we can't do it, it will bankrupt us. And Rudiger said, give me 3 dice or I walk. And, well, the rest is history. 3 dice means you can choose which 2 dice to pair up, so you have options over which field to activate. Simple. No, it's not simple, because the other die is used to choose one of 6 upgrades to your farm. Every turn you get a new card to improve a field. And as the game goes on, they get more powerful. When you take it, you can put it on any field, remembering that some numbers get rolled more than others. Do you want eggs more often, or do you want the opportunity to sell more often? The truth is, you don't know. This is exactly what your father's ghost was on about. The challenge in My Farm Shop is balancing stock turnover. There are times when your shop will be bursting with produce and you just can't sell it, to the point that excess goes to waste. And other times, the dice will grant you a rare chance to sell, and you've got nothing to sell. It's a pain that you learn from, and because of the freedom of the game, it never feels like luck. It feels like you've focused too much on one thing or the other. The other players also have their influence because you activate a field on everyone else's turn as well. So the dice they choose to pair up will help you or hurt you. It means you're always interested in what's going on. Even if they roll a number you don't want, you can alter it by playing a burlap sack. And they become so important later on when you've got a really good field that you want to keep activating. Beyond that, there are sunflowers which you can earn and place on a field to make it produce double. Every little rule is intuitive and adds its own weight to the decisions you make. It's absolutely simple enough to teach to newbies, but there's hidden depth, and it's well hidden underneath a name and some artwork that would make a gamer dismiss it, which is a real shame because it's one of the most engaging games I've played this year. After 3 years of mild onslaught, I finally played Fantasy Realms. It is a brilliant card game that could and should be about anything else. What it's really about is creating the perfect hand of cards. You start with 7 cards that don't go together, and then you end with 7 cards that hopefully complement each other so well that you score 300 points. The cards all have their own specific demands. Imagine you're trying to host the perfect dinner party. If you invite Roger, you can't invite Nigel because they hate each other. But you want Nigel there because he'll get along really well with Terry, except Terry isn't going to be any fun without his wife Marion, so you invite her, but now you can't serve the chicken you've already bought, and so on. That's exactly how Fantasy Realms feels. Getting a new card, such as the King, helps you score another card, but now he wants something else. And you're trying to find a harmonious balance that always feels just outside your grasp as the game hurries to its end. But rather than feeling hampered by problems, it's surprisingly positive. Almost all the cards give you more points. The challenge is in finding the really lucrative combinations. Finding the Monica and Chandler pairings, not the Rachel and Joeys. Each turn, you take a card and then discard one. You can take a fresh card from the deck or from any previously discarded card out on the table. It's nice to be able to see what's available so you can give up on one strategy and switch to another. I love that some cards encourage you to take bigger risks. Candle gives you 100 points, but only if you get Book of Changes and Bell Tower. What if they never come out of the deck? It's always fun shooting for the moon. And in Fantasy Realms, there's more than one moon to aim for. Desperately seeking a card can cause you trouble because every time you take from the deck, you get closer to the end. Once there are 10 cards in the discard area, the game ends. And if you wasted that time hoping for a card that never arrives, you're gonna lose. Life is what happens when you're making other plans. Its beauty is in its simplicity. I'd assumed the card text would be complicated, and that wrapping my head around it all would be a chore, but it's fine. And we didn't even ever have to go back to the rulebook, which is a rare and treasured thing these days. In fact, the most complicated aspect of the game is counting up the points. But for a relatively solitary game, you want to show off what you've collected. And there's a WizKids app which makes it a lot easier. With the right theme and art, I think this game could have been even bigger. Very few games are this simple and this satisfying. But at the end of the day, in the war of gameplay versus art, gameplay will always win. Better to be ugly and fun than pretty and boring.
Spring Meadow is basically Tetris the board game. You're trying to fit these tricky shapes into your puzzle. You choose a piece and slot it into complete rows and leave no gaps. Gaps are the devil's crevices. There's just something so right about finding that perfect piece to fill our unique space. It taps into something deep within all of us. For that brief moment, the relentless humming of the universe fades away and you experience peace. It's primal. We have been programmed by evolution to stick protrusions in openings. If your brain's up to it, Spring Meadow has a second level of puzzling going on. Not only do you want your pieces to fit neatly, but you're trying to line up these holes at the same time. If you do that, you get bonus rocks, which will help you fill up your board faster. Spring Meadow is an engrossing puzzle to get stuck into as you race to fill up your board faster and more efficiently than your rivals. The next category is called friendly competition. These games are nice and interactive. You're aware of what your opponent is doing and you're trying to outdo them, but they never get too heated. This is the category I'd recommend for most couples.
In Sobek, 2 players, you're in an ancient Egyptian market collecting goods. It's like a competitive shopping trip. You're trying to get everything you want and stop your opponent from getting what they want. On your turn, you take something from the market in the line where the ankh is pointing. I'm gonna grab some ivory. I'm making a piano for dinner. What makes the game so interesting is that when you take a tile, it tells you where the ankh will point next. so you know what tiles your opponent will be able to take. Sometimes getting what you want means they'll get something even better.
I know it's our 20th anniversary, but that just means we've had so many of them that we're bored of them by now. So, can I go to the board game convention?
Okay, then I won't feel bad about going to Ibiza with the girls, even though it's on your birthday.
Wait, what? It really makes you think twice about what you take, because you can look ahead and predict what you'll get down the line. One bad decision, taking something that's exciting now, could leave you with regret and failure, just like your mum said would happen if you did drugs. Little did she know you could achieve that without ever doing them. But being picky comes at a price, because every tile from the Ankh pawn that you skip over goes into your corruption pile. And if you end up with more corruption, it gives points to your opponent. It's such a great dilemma. You have the option to cut corners, but if you do it too much, you'll live to regret it. It's how politics used to work. And when do you sell a set? If you go early, you get first dibs on these special tokens, but if you get more of that type later, you might not be able to sell them, and goods left in your hand go on your corruption pile. There are also these powerful character tiles that you take face down, so you don't know what your opponent has. And it puts you on edge. Is it a gun in their pocket or just a banana? I love that you can plan ahead in this game, but I also love that you can puncture those plans. And then if you're really good, you can plan for the punctures. But at a certain point, that's just anxiety. Fungi, also known as morels, is a game that captures the everyday stresses of foraging for mushrooms. As you walk through the woods together, you take it in turns to pick some fungus from under your feet. And no, not your athlete's foot. Do you take the common honey fungus or the rare morel, which tastes better but is a lot harder to come by? Because you need at least 3 of the same type to eat them. You won't want to heat your pan up over nothing. So if you take a morel now, how long is it going to sit in your hand before you get another 2 to cook it? And with so many different types of fungi, your hand is filling up with all this stuff that doesn't go together, like you're buying clothes in TK Maxx. Which wouldn't be a problem if it weren't for your hand size. You see, the irony of this game is you don't have mushroom. And if you want the jokes to get better than that, you have to like and subscribe. Your tiny hands can only hold 8 mushrooms at a time, and it becomes a problem almost immediately. At first, you're gaily strolling through the forest without a care in the world.
Yeah, I think I'll have a porcini. For free.
And in no time at all, you're freaking out because you can't pick up the mushrooms you need. Babe, it's your turn.
I know it's my turn, but I need to take the porcini so I have 3 to cook them, but I don't have space to take it, and to make space, I need to cook something, but I don't have 3 of anything, and to get 3 of something, I need to take the porcini, but I can't. Babe.
There are a few ways to make space, like taking a basket, which means you can carry more. But if you do something sensible like that on your turn, you won't be doing what you love, taking mushrooms. It'd be like going to McDonald's and having a salad. And if you don't take a card now, your opponent might grab it. There's only enough of the better mushrooms for one of you to make a meal out of them. Leave Chanterelle alone, she's mine.
Don't personify the mushrooms, John, it's creepy.
You can take a mushroom further down the path by spending walking sticks to reach ahead and grab it. But to get sticks, you have to sell some mushrooms. It means giving up on one dream so you can invest in another. Like a pair of nepotism babies, in Fungi you're overwhelmed with good opportunities, and you physically can't take all the other actors' roles. This game is a timely reminder that being rich is hard. In Shottentotten, also known as Battle Line, you play as rival Scottish clans, fighting over a border. But you actually don't attack each other. You send your troops up to the line, and they stand there like catwalk models, facing each other off, but never touching. The player with the hottest models wins that battle. For today's battle, we've gone with a bagpiper, an archer, and a muscleman, all in a matching purple.
Wow, yours are way hotter. I've just got 3 wizards.
Like many of the best 2-player games, it's competitive. If I eat this cake, that's less cake for you, but it's not destructive. I can't come into your house and bend all your cake forks. To win these stones, you're trying to build sets of cards that are stronger than your opponent's, and they work like poker hands. The strongest is a run of the same color, then 3 of a kind, and so on. The trouble is, you have to put a card down every turn, so You can't wait to collect better cards before you make plans. You have to start committing immediately. It's like you're a football manager who has to pick their midfield before they even know what attackers are at the club. Okay, I'll put the 5 here, I guess, and hopefully I'll draw the 4 or the 6. No? Okay, great. But how long do you wait for the perfect cards? If you've got 2 more 5s, you could give up on a color run and get a 3 of a kind. A bird in the hand is better than spending your whole life single because you're waiting for Dua Lipa to call. That's the heart of the game, hope and compromise. Knowing when to be ambitious, early 20s, and when to give up on being a rock star and settle for a secure office job, late 20s. You also have to accept that you can't win all the stones, so deciding where to put your best efforts is crucial. If they come in early with a strong set, you should probably let them have it and save your good cards for somewhere else, so their best troops got all dolled up for an empty battlefield. The whole game is play a card, then take a card. It couldn't be simpler, and yet the decision of which card to play and where is up there with the best. In Carcassonne, you are all creating a region of France on the table. You take a tile and you have to add it to the map. What makes it so smooth is that the rules are visually intuitive. You can't connect a road to an empty field, but you wouldn't want to, it would feel wrong. Roads meet roads, cities meet cities, fields meet fields. It's like being the child of an Instagrammer. If it doesn't look nice, you can't do it. When you place a tile, you can add one of your people to it to take ownership of the city or road that you're building, so that when it's completed, you'll score points for how big it is and get your person back. Or should I say, if it's completed. If it gets too big or you don't get the tiles you need, it might never be finished, and your person will be stuck on it all game. Their only life on this earth spent working towards a project that gets completely forgotten about, like a medieval Netflix original. And you only have a few people, so you have to be careful where you invest them. It feels terrible to send your last person to control a tiny road one turn, and then the next draw a monastery tile which you can't use because you don't have anyone left. It'd be like marrying off your daughter to a blacksmith just to get a free axe, and then the next day you hear the Crown Prince is single. What I love about Carcassonne is that you're all adding to the map together in a sort of reluctant collaboration. And if you're feeling feisty, you can try to leech off someone else's city or road and get the points that they've built up. Or just make it harder for them to ever finish it. What are you doing?
I'm making your city bigger.
But now I'm never going to get to finish it.
Yeah.
There is one tricky rule with Carcassonne, the farmer rule. But in the latest version, they tell you to play without it for the first game. It's even on a separate rule sheet, so it doesn't confuse you. A farmer scores points for all the cities in the field he's lying in. So it gives you an extra reason to build in certain places and to make sure you finish your cities off. Add it in once everything else makes sense, but make sure you do because it really ties the game together.
I would call Sea Salt and Paper a dark horse. And the reason I say that is because I don't want to say that a game about the sea has hidden depths. On the surface, at first glance, there's not much going on. You draw a card every turn, and you're trying to get matching pairs and collect sets of shells and penguins to get points. But within each simple move is an interesting decision. When you take a card, you can choose from 2 face-up cards, or you can take 2 cards from the top of the deck and pick one. Everyone loves a mystery box. A boat's a boat, but a mystery box could be anything. It could even be a boat. But by taking 2, the one you don't pick will now be a new exciting option for your opponents. With the basic cards, if you collect a pair of symbols, you can play them to score 1 point. And you also get to take its action, which gets you more cards. And that usually means more points. Each round is a race to 7 points, but only if that's when you want to get off the ride. If you have 7 points amongst the cards in your hand and in front of you, you can stop the round immediately and take those points. Or you can carry on to try and get more, because whatever you score will add to your total to win the game. Or you can gamble on a last chance. You give the other players 1 more turn, betting that you'll have more points than them. And if you're right, you score an extra bonus. It's the ultimate brag. You're not just saying, I'm better than you. You're saying, you can have another turn and you still won't catch me. Of course, if they do, then you look really stupid. It's such a cool original mechanism. You can't see all the cards your opponent is taking, so you don't know if you're ahead of them. I always love a final reveal in a game. And this is even better because it has an epilogue where the underdogs get one last shot at taking down Goliath. Luck plays a part, but I love that you can react to that. If you think you're not going to win a round, then focus on collecting one color so you get a good color bonus. You've lost the battle, but you can at least take home some grenades to help you win the war. And if another player is dragging a round out, don't try to catch up, just cut the cord as soon as possible so their big finish isn't quite so big. It reminds me of Rainer Knizia's Llama in that some people will dismiss it after one play as being too lucky, but if you give it a chance, there's treasure to be found. Just like in the sea. In Paris, La Cité de la Lumière, you're competing to light up the streets of Paris. You'll be placing streetlights and erecting buildings, trying to place them so they are well illuminated. The game plays out in two distinct phases. In the first, you're adding cobblestone tiles to the map of Paris, neatly held inside the box. You're trying to create regions of your color where you'll be able to build. Each tile has orange and blue sections, the two-player colors. So every time you expand your orange region, you might be expanding your rivals too. And then you have the neutral purple spaces, which either player can build on. As you place these tiles down, you do it with a vision in your head of what buildings you'll put there in the second half of the game. You're also trying to carve out a spot that's adjacent to streetlights, because you score points for the size of the building multiplied by the number of lights shining on it. Instead of laying a tile this turn, you can reserve a building, putting it in front of you to place later. But then you miss an opportunity to shape the city in the way that suits you. And if you only focus on the cobblestones, the other player might take the buildings you want. Both actions are vital, and doing one will feel like you're betraying the other. It's like having to decide between oxygen and water. Already in the first phase, the game is tense because you're casting the future. If you don't make space for your buildings, there's only so much you can do about it later, and wasted buildings score you minus points. Once all the cobblestone tiles are in, the phase ends. And in phase 2, you again have to decide between two actions. The first is to get one of your buildings down, putting it into a legal spot. And this is where those fickle purple spaces are forced to pick sides, giving themselves to the player who first shows them affection. And when you realize that your dream location that you were trying to keep quiet about is also your opponent's dream location. And your heart breaks for not seeing purple's wandering eyes. Whilst missing out on a space can feel awfully final, the game does offer you some second chances. Instead of playing a building, you can activate a postcard, using its special ability to rescue some points. Levitation lets you swap out a building tile you have with one that wasn't taken. With Chartier, you can make more room for yourself by adding an extra purple space to the board. The postcard actions are great because they keep the second phase exciting, providing some twist to what might seem inevitable. Paris feels fresh. It's nothing like my other two-player games. Splitting the game into two phases forces you to plan as you try to keep your vision together in your head. And there's a real jeopardy in your opponent jumping in to steal your spot or your postcard. Fugitive condenses all the good bits of a chase movie and delivers not only a 20-minute manhunt, but one of the most original couples games I've ever played. The fugitive is moving from one hideout to the next, leaving a trail behind him. But his options are limited and he can't travel too far. The marshal is eliminating potential hiding spots from her investigation and busting down doors to try and find where he's been. The fugitive can spend extra cards to sprint further, but the marshal will know about it, or bluff by sprinting when he doesn't need to. You'll be sweating as you worry you're going to be caught at any minute. As the marshal, you piece together your clues and try to think like the fugitive. And the game comes with this cool little whiteboard to track your information, and it's so satisfying when your detective work pays off. And that's the beauty of Fugitive. It evokes such a big feeling from such a small box. The final category is for head-to-head games. If you and your partner like getting competitive, these are the games for you. They often feel like a tug of war as you try not to give ground to your opponent. And none of these are aggressive or mean. I've left games like that out of this video entirely, so don't dismiss them. Some of my wife and I's favorite games are in this category because we really enjoy the more involved back and forth.
In Caesar, you're fighting over ancient Rome in the friendliest war game you'll ever play. It puts the civil into civil war.
I'd quite like Sardinia, if that's all right.
Actually, I'd also like Sardinia. Sorry.
Well, I must say, I would really like Sardinia.
Okay, fine. You clearly want Sardinia more than me. Every turn, you place a token, staking a claim to a region. You're like two siblings dividing up your father's belongings, putting a post-it note on everything you want to keep.
Well, obviously I should take Sicily because me and Dad both love lemons.
I'm not letting you have Sicily. You'll just put it straight on eBay. I know it. You place your tokens on the borders of a region, and when it's filled up, whoever has the most influence there wins control. You're racing to get all your banners down to win the game. What's clever is that your tokens are split in two, so you're adding strength to two regions at once on either side of the border. And like having two birthday parties on one night, you can either half-heartedly attend both, impressing no one, or make a real impact at one and skip the other, losing a friend or a foothold in Dalmatia in the process. Location is everything, because if you win a region that's next to one you already own, you get to place a banner on the border between them. It's like if you get two seats next to each other at the cinema, you also control the armrest in between, which is of great strategic importance. It means you have to be careful not to let your opponent dominate one area, because every adjacent region is worth double, and it snowballs really quickly.
I can't let you take Italy when you've already got Sicily. But they come as a pair. Dad wouldn't want us to split them up. Or to argue.
But if you have both, where am I supposed to go on holiday? Numidia. Sounds like an STI. The magic touch are these bonus tokens, which go not to the winner of a region, but the player who placed the last token there. Taken at the right time, they're enough to swing a game in your favour, and it tears you between focusing on key strategic positions and claiming the bonuses that will make you stronger, but all the while at the mercy of your small hand of tokens. Even when there's a perfect place to send your legions, you might not have the type you need for that space. It's agony. Like, for once you're actually excited to go to the gym, but your kit's in the wash. And I love how reactive this game is. You're constantly distracted from your strategy to respond to what your opponent is doing. It's like trying to watch a film while looking after a 2-year-old. The longer you put off dealing with them, the bigger and more irreversible the mess. Arboretum is one of the most amazing, agonizing, brilliant, unbearable card games you'll ever play. You're planting rows of beautiful trees to create an idyllic arboretum that will delight the senses and soothe the soul.
Oh, for sake, I it up.
You're trying to create runs of trees. For example, collecting all the cherry blossoms and planting them in order from 1 to 8. That's the dream. Okay, I'll put the 5 Cassia here, and hopefully I'll get the 6 soon. And you'll wait for that card like a prom date that you know deep down has stood you up.
Next time, she could show up any minute.
But you don't need a run of all the same tree to get points. And the game is licking its lips, waiting for you to give up on that dream and lower your standards.
You can put me in your arboretum.
No thanks, I'm waiting on someone else. As long as the walk starts and ends with the same tree, you'll score every tree in between, no matter how ugly it is. It's like a Kit Kat. You can get away with 90% cheap wafer, as long as you start and end with some nice chocolate.
Come see my cherry blossoms. Look, here's a cherry blossom, then ignore that, ignore that, ignore that. And to finish, a cherry blossom. It really is a wonderful cherry blossom arboretum.
But if you do make an untainted run of the same tree, you will score double points, so that is still very much the dream. And compromising on it feels like making a pizza with baby bells. Every turn you draw 2 cards, then you plant one and discard one. And deciding which card to discard makes Sophie's choice feel like picking a brand of bottled water. Imagine you're clearing out your house, and with everything you get rid of, you're not just saying, I don't play this guitar. You're saying, I will never be the type of person that plays guitar.
I can't do it. I can't get rid of anything.
You never touch your Royal Poincianas. Just get rid of one of them.
Yeah, but I've been meaning to get into Royal Poincianas for ages. I've just been really busy. There's a lot to keep up with on Twitter at the moment.
But you have to get rid of something. So you put the guitar out by the bins, and within seconds, your neighbour picks it up.
What? I didn't know you played guitar. You don't have one in your flat?
Yeah, but I've been really meaning to get into it, so thanks. Not only will you now never learn the guitar, but you've got to live next door to a living embodiment of everything you could have been. And that's not even the most evil bit of this game. Your points that you're working so hard on are not guaranteed. You can have a delightful run of jacarandas and score exactly 0 for it. You only score for a type of tree if you have the most points of it left in your hand at the end of the game. Okay, willows. I've got 7.
Uh-huh. And I've got the 8, so only I can score it. Soz?
But you don't have any willows.
Yeah, but you do. I said Soz.
So a huge part of the game is keeping trees in your hand to fight over scoring. Should you play that 7 to make your Arboretum better, or keep it to protect yourself? Every time you draw a tree that they've got in theirs, you want to keep it to screw them over. But if you put all your energy into being negative, trying to tear them down, you'll end up with nothing positive for yourself. Hashtag Brexit. You can't choose who you fall in love with, and you can't change that one of the best couples games ever made is about the Watergate scandal. One of you plays America's sweetheart, Richard Nixon, and the other plays the pesky journalist that he would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for. Every round is a tug of war. The journalist is trying to gain evidence by pulling it towards their side. If they win them, they can pin it to their pegboard. They're trying to create a link from Nixon to 2 of their informants. But if Nixon wins the evidence, he can burn it and use it to block off a connection, making it harder for the journalist. Meanwhile, Nixon is trying to win political momentum, these red tokens. They need 5 to win the game. So both sides have their ultimate prize to aim for, but like a game of capture the flag, if you focus too much on attack, you'll leave your base undefended and make it too easy for your opponent to win. In reality, it's like 5 games of tug of war at once. 3 evidence tokens, the momentum, and the initiative, which decides who gets one more card next round. And you need that to stay ahead. You're pulling at the ropes by playing cards, and you can either use its value to move something that many spaces towards your side, or you can play its action. Most of them have game-changing events that are so powerful you can only use them once, and then you have to remove it from the game. But when is the right time? It's like you only have 1 grenade, and you need to wait for enough zombies to collect before you throw it in. And by burning that card in a blaze of glory, you can no longer use its value in future tugs of war. It's like blurting out that you hate someone, blowing your cover when you would have got way more enjoyment from months of little snide remarks. Individually, they don't seem like much, but they have a bigger impact in the long run. The theme makes the game seem more complicated than it is. There's a visceral feeling to what you're doing in this game, waiting for the right time to stick your neck out and attack. As soon as you show your hand, you're vulnerable. If you come at the king, you best not miss.
Match of the Century is a 2-player game in which you're trying to win a famous chess match, but you're not playing chess. It's a chess game, not a game of chess. I don't know how to make that any clearer. It's from the same line as Watergate, an incredible 2-player game that also portrays a part of history I couldn't care less about, and does such a good job of bringing it alive that it makes me want to read the historical booklet that comes with the game, at some point. To win the chess match, you need to win 6 games of chess, and each game is broken up into 4 exchanges. An exchange is where you both play a card and the highest wins, gaining you the advantage. If you have the advantage after 4 exchanges, you win that game. But not the game, because this time it's called a match. There's 2 really cool things that I want to tell you about. The first is that you only get to use the power on your card if you lose the exchange. And they're so good that sometimes you're desperate to lose because you need the power to help you long term. It means it's great to play second because you can decide whether to respond with a higher card and beat them, or take the loss to use an amazing power. So much of the game is that decision. Or if you don't want them to win and you don't want them to use their power, you can force a tie so no one gets anything. The second cool thing is that your hand of cards is double-sided, and it changes whether you're playing as white or black. Your special power is only on one side of the card, so your hand transforms from game to game. It's agonizing having to play a card on its weaker side, like going into battle with Bruce Banner when you know what the Hulk is capable of. If you like intelligent head-to-head two-player card games like Watergate or Air, Land and Sea, you need to check this one out. And yeah, it feels weird to play a game about chess when I don't actually play chess, but I play video games about killing people, and I don't do that anymore either.
I don't like chess as a couples game because it always favors the experienced player.
Checkmate.
Ah.
Checkmate. Checkmate.
But
It's only a matter of time.
I prefer to play Onitama, which has a feel of chess, but it levels the playing field by making it impossible to master, because the movement of the pieces are controlled by cards, and the cards you use are different every time, so a good strategy in one game won't work in the next. To move a piece, you play a card, and the card tells you where you can move it, which is great because you don't have to learn and remember how the pieces move. It shows you, like the options are lit up in an app. Just like in chess, you're trying to take each other's pieces by making an attack.
Have you still not taken the bins out?
But by playing it, you give that card to the other player, so you're opening yourself up to them using it against you.
Well, since we're talking about the bin, the last time you took it out, you didn't clean up the bin juice.
You can use the cards to look ahead, planning a few turns in advance. And it's not just about if I move here, then they'll do that, but if I move here using this card, which adds another layer to consider. You'll still find yourself in those familiar stalemates, knowing that if you take their piece, they'll just take yours. And often it will center around one card that you know if you use it, it gives them the chance to take your king. So they try to put you in a position where you have to use it. It's satisfying thinking through a strategy and pulling it off, just like you get from playing chess, but Onitama is less intense, less serious. It only lasts 20 minutes, anyone can play it, and you don't have to stay up all night hallucinating chessboards on the ceiling to be any good at it.
And Soz.
It's not just chess then. Of all the many head-to-head two-player card games that could have made this list, Lost Cities is the best. And if you disagree with that, you can argue with me about it on my Discord by becoming a patron of the channel. It's so good that it inspired two other games on this list. Its designer Rainer Knizia came up with Schottentotten while making Lost Cities, and Dan Cassar credits it as his biggest inspiration for Arboretum. In Lost Cities, you play as rival adventurers. There are 5 trails to explore, and you go on expeditions by playing cards of that color in order. The longer the expedition, the better, because every card you collect is worth that number in points. It's a game of big risks and big rewards. First of all, expeditions are expensive. You can't just get the number 10 bus to a lost city. You need to charter a flight for Indiana Jones and cover his hat budget. Every expedition you start costs you minus 20 points. So before you start one, you might want to make sure you have enough cards to win that 20 points back, and then some. Unlike Schottentotten and Arboretum, the game lets you wait. Instead of playing a card onto an expedition, you can discard it and draw a new one. So you can build an expedition in your hand before committing. But by trying to avoid one risk, you're risking something else, giving your opponent something they really need.
I'm giving away this tiny jug, it's useless to me.
Useless? Now I've got the full set, it's worth millions.
Wait, I haven't let go of it.
But you said it's useless to you.
Yeah, but I don't want you to make millions, that's not fair.
And you're risking running out of time to finish your expeditions. If you take too long getting ready to go out, you'll have less time on the dance floor. But if you can wait and pull off an expedition with 8 or more cards, you get a 20-point bonus. So it's big rewards like that that make you want to spend even longer on your hair. The biggest risk are these wagers. They will double, triple, or quadruple your score for that expedition. Big reward. But if you end up with a minus score, it will double that too. massive risk. You're effectively placing a bet on doing well, and it's exactly the kind of alpha male bravado you'd expect from an adventurer. Not only will I find this lost city, but I'm going to explore the shit out of it, I bet you.
Okay, babe, just don't forget to wear insect repellent.
Oh, come on, I was being alpha. And because you have to make that bet at the start of the expedition, before you know what cards you'll get, it's ripe for a comeuppance.
How was the lost city? Did you have fun?
I don't want to talk about it.
Well, it wouldn't be a lost city if everyone found it.
And the rivalry in this game is exquisite. It's like you're a pair of drunk explorers bragging to each other about what you'll achieve while secretly hating each other. Chichen Itza. More like Chichen Itza not that hard to find.
Good luck finding it without this, douchebag.
What?
Oh, nothing. I just said, good luck finding it without this cool hat.
Holding on to the cards your opponent needs is just the kind of passive aggression we love in a game. And by pissing in your neighbor's pint glass, some of it will inevitably splash into yours because you'll have less space for expedition maps if your backpack is taken up with voodoo dolls. Lost Cities doesn't reveal its brilliance until a few plays, when it takes off its glasses and you see it's been beautiful the whole time, like the girl in She's All That, a film released in 1999, the same year as Lost Cities, because if you make a classic, it stays relevant. I'm not a fan of the Star Wars franchise, and that can make it quite hard to live on this planet. Almost as hard as it is to be a Star Wars fan, from what I can gather. I would usually overlook Star Wars games like a meat eater ignoring a vegetarian sausage, but occasionally they can conjure something out of soy protein that's so good it transcends the divide. And today is the day I enjoy a Star Wars game. It's the new 2-player deck building game, a game that quite obviously builds upon other 2-player deck building games like Star Realms, but it adds some interesting innovations. One of you plays as the Empire and the other as the Rebels, and you're trying to destroy your rivals' bases. Whoever does it first wins the game. But as with any deck building game, you have to build up your strength. You start with a pathetic starter deck of nameless red shirts and use them to buy better cards that will attack, defend, and buy more efficiently. The cards you can buy are in a row in front of you and they come out of the deck at random. I really like that because it's simple to set up and it makes the game evolve differently each time you play. It means your strategy has to constantly adapt to what's available. It also adds drama to the game. As soon as you buy a card, a new one is added. And if you reveal Luke Skywalker, famously the son of Buzz Lightyear, you're desperately hoping your opponent can't afford it. A lot of the cards are specific to each faction. Only the Rebels can buy Princess Leia because it wouldn't make sense for her to side with the Empire. But one of the best bits of the game is that the other side can attack that card, removing it from the galaxy row to stop your opponent from getting it. It adds to that fun deck building dilemma of short-term versus long-term. Do you kill Leia so they can't use her against you later, or go straight for the win and use those attack points to hit their base? Another thing you have to keep your eye on is the force track. This is a little tug of war you have going on between you. Some cards will let you pull it towards your side, and if the force is with you, it makes certain cards way more powerful. Darth Vader has 6 attack power normally, but if the force is with you, it goes up to 10. It can be easy to neglect it. Each little force benefit on their own isn't so bad. It's like them getting a 10% discount. But if you let your neighbor get 10% off every shot, it's gonna add up, and suddenly they've got a swimming pool and you've lost. Another nice touch is that the base cards have special powers, so when they destroy one, the next one you pick can suit your strategy. Like the Death Star can destroy a capital ship for 4 spending power, so it's perfect late in the game where you're no longer buying cards and they've got loads of defensive ships blocking you. It's remarkably smooth. For an IP game, there's no pointless bells and whistles. The few additions that they've made to this genre of game serve the theme and the gameplay in the same breath. If you like Star Wars, it's a no-brainer, and if you don't, it's still a great 2-player game. This is my new favorite 2-player game to play with my wife. It's one of those head-to-head 2-player games where you fight over control of a middle ground, which is a niche that is full of great games like Shotentoten and Hanamakoji. You play cards into the 3 theatres of war, trying to win 2 of them. Each card has a strength and an ability, and the clever play is in how you use those abilities to attack or defend, because they can combo together really well. But the absolute genius of the game is something that no other card game does. Each round is a battle, and if you think you're losing the battle, you can withdraw. You should withdraw. Let's face it, not every hand is as strong as another. Sometimes your odds are bad, so you can concede, bow out, and live to fight another day. Even though it goes against everything you believe in, the smart move is to spot your weakness early and withdraw. Because the later you withdraw, the longer you blunder on pig-headedly, the more points they will get for their victory. But it's hard to know how you'll fare, what cards they have, and how they'll counter yours. And meanwhile, your ego is telling you, you can do this. It's that dynamic that makes Air, Land and Sea feel so different. A game that rewards humility and biding your time.
Air, Land and Sea is one of my favourite two-player games that I've raved about on this channel a couple of times. And now Spies, Lies and Supplies is a standalone sequel come expansion that is just as good. Once again, you're competing over 3 theatres of war. This time, economics, intelligence and diplomacy. If you control 2 out of 3 of them, you win that battle. But the best bit of Air, Land and Sea is that if you think you're going to lose, you can withdraw from the battle early so that your opponent gets less points. They still get their victory parade, but you took the helium out of their balloons. It makes for a fascinating game. How long do you cling on to the hope that you can still win a battle? Very few games ask you whether you're self-aware enough to know that you're losing. And if you're too much of a pessimist, you can surrender to battles you would have won. Ideally, you'd look at your cards and think, I can't win this round, but all the cards in this game are good. The 6s are brute strength, and the rest come with a hand grenade strong enough to change the game, if played at the right time. Another thing I love about this game is there's only 18 cards, so it doesn't take you long to get to know them and expect them. There's even a reference on the back of the theatres. It means you get that satisfying feeling of knowing the game quicker than with other card games with loads of powers to remember. The way the cards combine with each other makes you feel clever. Retrofit lets you gain supplies, which count as strength, equal to a card that you flip. So you can flip your Grand Betrayal, adding 6 strength to that theatre, and next turn you can use another card to flip it back over, so now you've got 12 strength there. You only play 6 cards each battle, but every turn feels like a big turn. The cards in Spies, Lies and Supplies feel a little more dramatic than the original, and they fit the espionage and diplomacy theme. Neutralize lets you name a card, and if your opponent has it, they have to play it face down next turn, neutralizing it. I'm not usually one for sequels, I made a whole video about it, but this is a really distinctive alternative. And you can use it as an expansion, mixing and matching the theatres. Air, Lies and Sea, Spies, Land and Supplies, Bed, Bath and Beyond. You can even play an epic mode with 5 theatres, and there's rules for a team variant. I haven't gotten to any of that yet because I'm enjoying it too much as the base game. I think I prefer this version, but it's hard to be sure that that's not a novelty bias. I'm going to keep both in my collection for now. If you like head-to-head 2-player card games, you need to try one of these.
Less rules doesn't mean there's any less of a game, and Blue Lagoon is the perfect example of that. It's an iceberg. Above the surface, it's tiny. I've received Christmas cards bigger than this pamphlet. But beneath the surface hides a real boat breaker of a game. You play as seafarers, turning up to these islands and putting down roots. And what you do each turn is as simple as it gets. You place one of your people on the board, either arriving in a boat or settling on a nearby island. That's all you do, every turn. But why you do it, that's what the iceberg is hiding. There are 5 ways to score points. For example, if you have the most people on an island, you get points. But you also get them for linking islands together, so that makes you want to spread out. And while you're doing both of those things, if you go on a spot with a wooden resource, you collect it, and they're worth points too. You want to do it all, and everyone else is getting in your way. So that simple act of placing 1 tile at a turn becomes such a tough decision. Imagine you're at a buffet table. Hands are coming in from all sides. While you're going big on sausage rolls, Aunt Christine is making sure you won't even taste the trifle. Every grab matters. We all think we'd be Leonardo DiCaprio, but when that iceberg hits, women and children first goes out the window, and you have to accept that deep down you're Billy Zane. That's what Blue Lagoon feels like.
All my favourite two-player games involve getting in each other's way, and in Orion Duel, that's literally what you're doing on the board. You're trying to create a path from one side to the other. If you do, you win the game, so your opponent is trying to stop you while creating one of their own. Every attempt you make to push forward is met with a block, diverting you to take the long way round, like trying to walk a straight line through IKEA. It looks remarkably like Blockbusters, the quiz show from the 80s, in which you're also trying to create paths of blue hexes from one side to the other. I'm not saying they've copied it, I just think the simulation we're all living in has run out of ideas. To make matters worse, your tiles are infected by your opponent's colour. Every time you try to make progress for yourself, you're forced to add their colour to the board as well. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You want to run away, start a new thing, but they follow you wherever you go, like Backney. You wriggle and squirm your way around the obstacles, and if you do win, it's always this last-ditch stretch across the line, like scoring a try in rugby right by the corner flag as your ankle escapes their grasp. That in itself feels like a solid game, but it's the other 2 ways to win that take things up a notch. On the board, you have galaxies and black holes. If you can connect up 4 galaxies with your colour, you immediately win the game. It's the perfect distraction. You'll take the tiniest of detours from your path to get a nearby galaxy, but that's all it takes to lose control of the game. It's classic space hubris. Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar just wanted to check out a cool planet, and suddenly his daughter is Jessica Chastain, which in this case is a bad thing. With the black holes, you can win by connecting 3 of them to your opponent's colour. So it's this bitchy sabotage, like you've given up making a path for yourself and you just start throwing trash at theirs. It adds this extra thing to think about. If the most direct route is next to a black hole, should you take the risk? I've had great moments where I'm 1 turn away from completing my path, but if I do, it will join up 3 black holes and lose me the game. It's the sort of 2-player game you can learn in seconds, and you'll always play at least 3 times in a row. I love that every decision matters, but it doesn't tie my brain in knots. If you want to try it out, you can play it for free on Board Game Arena. It's a 2-player strategy game. You each have your own set of insects, and the goal is to surround your opponent's queen bee on all sides and stop them from doing the same to you. It's simple to play. You either add a piece or move a piece. Each insect moves in a different way. The grasshopper jumps over a line of pieces. The beetle can crawl on top of pieces to stop them from moving. It's a game you can improve at, learning strategies with each game. And it's short, so you can play it over and over again. People flock in their droves to see Santorini, one of the most beautiful sites in Europe. And I'm not talking about that island in Greece, I'm talking about this board game. It's a tense affair where you're each building the island, trying to get in a position where you can make the winning move. It's about biding your time, building towards victory, but having a constant eye on thwarting your opponent. Each player has a god card, a special power that sets them apart. Demeter can build twice on a turn, Hermes can run all over the place, and Pan can win the game by jumping off a 2-story building. They make every game different, but crucially interesting, because every time you're having to come at it with fresh eyes and adapt your approach. With hundreds of different god combinations, it's impossible to master Santorini, and I like that because it means it's always a challenge, no matter who you play it with. Some couples may wish to play chess into their twilight years, learn the game inside out and understand each other's strategies. But I want to grow old with my partner playing Santorini so that it always feels fresh and exciting, a new challenge even after decades of playing it. That was my ultimate couples games guide. If you want to buy any of the games, there are links in the description below. If you like this video, please subscribe to see more. And remember, you can get 4 months free off Surfshark with the code Actualol, and there's a link to sign up below. I'm John Perkis, thanks for watching.